I was stirring a pot of soup on the stove when my phone vibrated on the counter. The screen lit up with my mother's name. Normally, I would have smiled and answered immediately, despite everything, despite the years of being compared, corrected, and quietly pushed aside. I still tried to be a good daughter. But something in my chest felt heavy as I picked it up. "Hello?" I said, wiping my hands on a towel. Mom didn't bother with greetings. Her voice came sharp, clipped, rehearsed. "Your sister wants her boyfriend to make a good first impression." I frowned. "Okay, and?" There was a pause. A long, uncomfortable one. And then the sentence that would slice straight through the thin thread that held my family together. "She thinks having you there would make her look bad." The soup simmered behind me, but all I could hear was a dull ringing in my ears. Me? Make her look bad? After everything I had done for that girl? After covering for her late-night escapes, driving her to classes, buying her dresses when Mom refused? After years of playing the quiet shadow so she could sparkle? My voice came out small. "So, I'm not invited?" Mom sighed, as if I were the one causing trouble. "It's just one Thanksgiving. Don't make this dramatic." I swallowed. This wasn't about a holiday. This was about being erased. Again. "You're choosing her feelings over mine," I whispered. "She's bringing her future husband," Mom snapped back. "We can't have tension." And honestly, her voice softened, but in the cruelest way. "You don't always know how to present yourself. She doesn't want him thinking the family is a mess." I couldn't speak. I felt myself shrink, the same way I'd learned to shrink as a child: sit straight, speak softly, don't argue, don't correct, don't shine. My entire life, I had been edited, trimmed, muted. But hearing it so plainly felt like being punched. "Okay," I finally said, though the word tasted metallic. I didn't trust myself to say more. And Mom, relieved I didn't fight, ended the call quickly. "Good. Enjoy your weekend then." Click. Just like that, I was dismissed. I stood in my silent kitchen, phone still in my hand, soup burning behind me. Something inside me cracked, not loudly, but like a small fault line splitting under pressure that had been building for years. I turned off the stove and walked to the living room, sinking onto the couch. The tears didn't come. Not yet. Maybe I'd cried too many times over this family to have any left. I kept replaying her words. "She thinks having you there would make her look bad." What was so bad about me? My job? Successful. My home? Stable. My personality? Kind, too kind, maybe. My independence? Maybe that was the real problem. I had built everything on my own. No loans, no handouts, no cheering squad. Meanwhile, my sister still leaned on our parents for everything, from emotional validation to rent money. And yet, I was the one being cut out to protect her image. I let out a shaky breath, pressing a hand to my chest. For the first time, I didn't feel shame. I felt anger. A clean, clear kind that didn't burn, but illuminated. A kind I hadn't allowed myself to feel in decades. All night, I sat in that quiet room. At first hurt. Then numb. Then thinking. And slowly, painfully, a truth settled over me. They had never chosen me. Not when I won awards. Not when I worked extra shifts to help with bills. Not when I picked up their pieces. They only chose the daughter who needed them more, because they wanted to feel needed. By morning, something inside me felt different. Not healed, but awake. I wasn't planning revenge. I wasn't planning anything at all. But life has a strange way of shifting when you least expect it. Because the next morning, at 9:12 a.m. exactly, 3 sharp knocks echoed through my apartment door, angry, urgent, demanding. My parents. And someone else behind them. Someone whose words would turn everything upside down. The knocking didn't stop. 3 sharp hits. Then 3 more. The kind of knocking meant to intimidate, not to request. I froze halfway to the door. No one came to my apartment unannounced, especially not this early. The only people who knocked like that were police, landlords, or family with an agenda. Open the door. That was my mother's voice. Tight, frustrated, already rehearsing an accusation. I exhaled slowly, rolling the tension out of my shoulders before unlocking the door. The moment it swung open, both my parents pushed their way inside like they owned the place. Mom marched straight into my living room, her coat still on. Dad was quieter, but his jaw was clenched the way it always was when he was prepared to lecture. I opened my mouth to ask what was going on, but that's when I saw him. Standing behind them, awkwardly shifting on his feet, hands in his pockets, eyes apologetic. My sister's boyfriend. The reason they uninvited me. The man I was apparently too embarrassing to be seen beside. I blinked, stunned. What was he doing here? Mom didn't give me time to ask. How dare you, she spat, pointing a finger at me like I was a misbehaving child. Do you know the trouble you've caused? What? Dad stepped forward, arms crossed. You told your cousin you weren't invited. Now it's all over the family group chat. Your aunt called us at midnight asking what happened. I almost laughed at the absurdity. So the problem is, that the truth got out? Mom's voice rose an octave. You are making us look heartless. Your sister is in tears. She said you're trying to ruin her dinner. My chest tightened. They didn't come here to apologize. They came here to scold me for not staying silent about my humiliation. Of course they did. I leaned against the wall, crossing my arms. You told me I wasn't invited. I didn't lie. You should have kept it to yourself, Dad snapped. You always turn everything into drama. A familiar sting shot up my spine. There it was. The family default setting, when in doubt, blame me. But before I could respond, a different voice cut through the room. I think she had every right to say something. The 3 of us turned. It was the boyfriend. Every head in the room shifted toward him like he had just spoken in another language. Mom scowled. Sweetheart, you don't need to involve yourself. No, he said firmly. I do. He stepped inside fully, closing the door behind him. His face carried the kind of honesty that was rare in my family, direct, unpolished, unafraid. I heard everything, he said quietly. I was there when your daughter called her yesterday. I listened. My heart thudded. He listened? Dad frowned. You shouldn't have. And I couldn't believe it, he continued. I asked her why her sister wasn't invited to Thanksgiving. You know what she said? I did. But hearing it out loud still made my stomach twist. Mom's voice wavered. She was nervous, that's all. No, he said. She said she was afraid her sister, he pointed at me, would overshadow her. She said she felt insecure standing next to someone so put together. Silence dropped heavy in the room. My breath caught. Overshadow her? Me? The one they treated like the family disappointment? Mom sputtered, that's ridiculous. It's the truth, he said, unbothered by her rising anger. She said she didn't want me to meet someone who made her feel small. She begged your wife not to invite her. Dad's cheeks reddened with embarrassment. But the boyfriend wasn't done. I came today because I think he looked directly at me, deserves to know the truth. Not the version everyone forces on her. For a moment, no one spoke. The walls felt closer. The air felt different. My parents exchanged a panicked look. And for the first time in my entire life, someone in this family, someone who barely even knew me, chose to defend me. But what he said next. That was what truly shattered the illusion my parents had protected for years. And it was something they never wanted me to hear. For a heartbeat, the room felt frozen. My parents stood stiff and defensive. I stood rooted to the floor, bracing myself for whatever might come next. And my sister's boyfriend, quiet, steady, unexpectedly brave, cleared his throat. "There's more you need to know," he said, his voice low but unwavering. Mom immediately stepped in front of him, as if physically blocking the truth would prevent it from spilling out. "That's enough," she hissed. "We don't discuss private family matters with outsiders." He shook his head. "Maybe that's the problem. There are too many things hidden." Dad growled, "Young man, you're overstepping." "No," he said calmly. "I'm being honest." He took a step toward me, hands still in his pockets but eyes filled with sincerity. "When she told me her sister wasn't invited," he said, "I asked why. She went quiet at first, then started blaming you, saying you cause tension, or you're too outspoken, or that you make everything about yourself." My stomach twisted. Those were old wounds, familiar arguments, repeated so often they had etched themselves into my self-image. "But then," he continued, "when I asked her to give me an example, just one, she couldn't." Mom shot me a hard look, as if daring me to speak. "I didn't." The boyfriend went on, voice gentle now. "That's when she broke. She admitted that you intimidate her. That your life makes her feel small." I blinked. "My life?" "Yes," he nodded. "Your career. Your independence. The fact that you don't need anyone. She said she feels compared to you all the time, even when nobody says anything. She thought if I met you first, I'd think she wasn't as accomplished. That she wasn't enough." The words hung in the air, raw, painful, strangely freeing. All my life, I had assumed I was the disappointment. The one who didn't quite fit. The one who never got it right. But hearing that my sister had been comparing herself to me all along, it was like the ground shifted beneath my feet. Dad rubbed his forehead. "She never said that to us." "She didn't need to," the boyfriend replied. "You both fed it." Mom gasped. "How dare. You constantly praise her for the smallest things," he said gently, "but you dismiss her sister's accomplishments." "I've seen it. Yesterday, your daughter showed me her published article online. Do you know how proud she was? Do you know what she said?" Mom stiffened. I don't." She said, "My parents didn't read it. They don't care." The silence was deafening. Mom didn't defend herself. She just looked away, jaw tight, eyes glistening with something she refused to acknowledge. I looked down at my hands. I remembered sending them the link. I remembered the unread message. I remembered telling myself it didn't matter. But hearing it spoken out loud felt like a wound reopening. "She's not the problem," the boyfriend said softly. "She's never been the problem." Dad's voice shook. "You don't know our family." "I know what I saw," he replied. "And I know what I heard last night." He turned back to me. "My girlfriend, your sister, asked me to pretend. She asked me to act shocked if anyone asked why you weren't there. She begged me to play along with the lie because she didn't want to seem insecure." I inhaled sharply. Mom whispered sharply, "Why would she tell you all this?" "She knows you hate drama." He hesitated. "Because I confronted her." Dad's brows furrowed. "About what?" The boyfriend took a deep breath. "Because I told her," he said slowly, "that the person in your family I actually wanted to meet the most was her sister." The air cracked like lightning. My heart stuttered. Mom's eyes widened. Dad's mouth opened and shut. "I follow your work," he admitted, cheeks reddening. "I've read your articles for years. I didn't realize you were related until she mentioned your name." I stared at him, stunned. "I admire you," he said simply. "You're everything she claims you aren't: calm, grounded, accomplished, compassionate. You've built a life she envies, a life most people your age dream of." My throat tightened. "And when she asked her parents to exclude you just so I wouldn't see the difference between you two?" He exhaled softly. I couldn't keep quiet. I stood there, unable to speak. All my life, my family had talked about me as if I were a burden, a complication, an embarrassment. But here was a near stranger telling me I was worth meeting. Worth admiring. Worth defending. Mom's voice quivered with something between anger and fear. This is going to cause a huge scene at Thanksgiving. The boyfriend looked at her, unbothered. Maybe the truth should. He turned back to me. And that's why I came today. To say you deserve better. And to give you something your family never gave you, an invitation. I blinked. An invitation? He smiled gently. To Thanksgiving. With me. And that moment. That quiet, unexpected invitation. Was the first taste of the revenge life was preparing for me. I didn't say yes immediately. Not because I didn't want to, but because the invitation felt unreal, like a kindness I hadn't earned, like a door I wasn't used to walking through. My parents stared at him as if he had spoken forbidden magic. Mom was the first to snap out of it. You can't just invite her behind everyone's back, she barked. This is our family dinner. He shrugged gently. She is your family. Isn't she? The question landed like a stone thrown into still water, quiet but unsettling, sending ripples through every lie my parents had tried to hold intact. Dad cleared his throat, softer this time. We didn't mean to hurt you. I didn't trust myself to speak, so I didn't. Instead, I let the truth hang in the air, heavy and undeniable. My parents exchanged a silent conversation, guilt flickering between them, before Mom's pride snapped back into place. Well, she said stiffly, if you're coming, then hurry. The dinner starts at 5. The boyfriend frowned. She's not coming to your dinner. I blinked. I'm not? No, he said simply. You're coming with me. I told my mother what happened, and she insisted you join us. She said, he smiled. She said no one deserves to eat alone after being treated like that. My breath caught. My family wasn't used to being told no, especially not by someone dating their golden child. The shock on their faces was enough to warm me from the inside out. Mom sputtered. This is ridiculous. You barely know her. And yet I respect her more than people who've known her entire life, he replied calmly. Dad looked away, shame flickering across his face. I exhaled. A small, trembling breath that carried years of swallowed words and unspoken pain. I'll go, I finally said. With him. Mom's hand flew to her chest like she'd been struck. You're choosing a stranger over your own parents? No, I said softly. I'm choosing myself. A silence fell that said everything they never had. Everything they should have said. Everything they never thought I deserved. My parents left without another word. The boyfriend, standing quietly beside me, waited until the door closed. Only then did he ask, "You okay?" I nodded slowly. For the first time in a long time, yes. The dinner that changed everything. His family's home was warm, filled with the smell of roasted turkey, sage stuffing, and cinnamon pie. But more than the food, it was the atmosphere that stunned me. The way they greeted me like an honored guest. The way his mother hugged me gently and whispered, "I'm glad you came, sweetheart." The way his nieces handed me handmade place cards and insisted I sit near the head of the table. They didn't know my story. But somehow, they treated me like I mattered. I laughed more in 1 hour than I had in an entire year. Halfway through dinner, my phone buzzed. A picture. From my aunt. Of my sister crying at the table while everyone argued. Below it. What happened? Your parents are losing their minds. I put the phone face down and continued eating. The sweet revenge wasn't loud. It wasn't vengeful. It wasn't about ruining anyone's night. It was this. Being somewhere I was wanted, while they sat with the consequences of pushing me away. The aftermath. Later that evening, the boyfriend walked me to my car. Cool air brushed against my cheeks, and the house behind us glowed with golden light. I'm sorry, he said softly, for everything they put you through. I smiled, a real one. You didn't cause any of it. You just pulled the curtain back. He hesitated. Will you be okay? I nodded. I think, this is the first Thanksgiving I'll actually remember for something good. He looked relieved. Then he said something I never expected. You deserve people who show up for you. I hope you let more of them into your life. For a moment, I couldn't speak. But I felt something shift inside me, an affirmation, a quiet rebuilding. I wasn't the invisible daughter anymore. I wasn't the second choice. I wasn't the burden they painted me as. I was finally someone who chose herself. The sweet revenge. The next morning, my mother called. Not to apologize. Not to take responsibility. But to say, your sister thinks you humiliated her yesterday. She's very upset. I smiled softly into the phone. I wasn't there, I said. Whatever happened, was all on you. And I hung up. This time, without hesitation. Without guilt. Without shrinking. Because the sweetest revenge isn't anger, or payback, or proving them wrong. It's walking away from the people who never appreciated you. And finding a life filled with people who do.